Hello and welcome back to another episode of the J Sports NFL Show. I'm your host, Joshua Nowakowski, excited to be with you today as Conference Championship weekend quickly approaches. I will be going over both games in depth and giving you my keys to victory, as well as score and who I think will be moving on to Super Bowl 59. Now, before we start the episode and get into these predictions, first I want to say, just as a reminder, follow me on all social medias. They're linked down below on Spotify and on YouTube. And follow me so you get the latest news on the show, when episodes are coming out, when content's coming out. I'm starting to make TikToks as well, so follow me on TikTok, as you'll see me posting more on there. Be sure to tell your friends about the show, as here we are trying to grow our audience. But the time has now come. Let's get into our first matchup. Now, our first game will be Sunday afternoon at noon with the NFC Championship game played between two NFC East Division rivals, the Washington Commanders and the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, Washington is coming off of their incredible 45-31 victory against the Detroit Lions, and that game saw Jaden Daniels absolutely obliterate this Lions defense with 299 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and adding 51 yards on the ground as well. Now, Daniels was not alone in the offensive attack, as running back Brian Robinson Jr. added in 2 rushing touchdowns, and wide receiver Dyami Brown continued his breakout this playoffs with 98-yard performance. All around, it was a great game for the Washington Commanders, as the defense also stepped up in a very big way against Detroit, forcing 5 turnovers and making sure whenever Detroit got momentum, Washington, boom, took it right back, whether that was offensively or defensively. They were firing on all cylinders the entire game. Now, quarterback Jaden Daniels has been on an absolute tear these playoffs so far, throwing for 567 yards, 4 passing touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. And in those 2 playoff games, he's only been sacked 1 time. He has shown such poise in the biggest moments, and like I said in prior shows and prior episodes, he looks like he's a 10-year vet who's been here before, and this isn't his first rodeo in the playoffs, which is just absolutely incredible from a rookie quarterback. Now, I was super excited about Daniels coming out of college, but if you told me he'd be leading the Commanders to the NFC Championship game and possibly the Super Bowl, I would not have believed you at all. Now, like I mentioned earlier, Daniels has been a big part of this team and this offense, as has Coach Dan Quinn, but the defense has also stepped up, especially in the playoffs and in the biggest moments, as they have caused 6 turnovers over the 2 playoff games, which leads all remaining teams in the playoffs this year. Now, Washington will have their work cut out for them, because on the other side is Saquon Barkley and the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, the Eagles are coming off of their very close, snowy victory over the Los Angeles Rams, 28-22. Now, in that game, that was more of a defensive game where we saw the defense step up, at the end and hold the Rams out of the end zone to seal their victory. Now, running back Saquon Barkley was an absolute monster once again, rushing for 205 yards, which again is an Eagles playoff single game record. He added 2 rushing touchdowns to that, and that brings him to a whopping 324 rushing yards so far in these playoffs. Incredible numbers from Saquon Barkley. Now, Even though quarterback Jalen Hurts hasn't been he hasn't thrown for more than 150 yards in either playoff game. He hasn't been super effective with his arm. He was able to be effective early on with his legs last game with that 44-yard rushing touchdown, but that was also before he injured his knee. Now, he injured his knee during the game last week. He stayed in, played the entire game, was a trooper out there, took some big hits. Now, this whole week, he has been a full participant in practice, and he has 0 injury designation heading into Sunday's game. However, he is expected to wear a knee brace during the game. We'll see how much that affects his mobility going forward and in the game. And much like the Commanders, this Eagles defense has really stepped up in these playoffs. They have forced 5 turnovers in their 2 playoff games and 7 sacks thus far. And they've held their opponents to an average of 16 points per game and have really hunkered down once opponents get across the 50-yard line. Once they cross the 50-yard line and are into Eagles territory, that defense seems to have a second gear to them, and they really, really step up when they need to and make the big plays when they need to. Now, obviously, with these teams in the same division, they met twice earlier this season, and they split the season series with the Eagles winning the first matchup 26-18 in week 11, and then the Commanders winning the second matchup 36-33 in week 16. Now that was with the home team winning both games. So, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for keys to victory. First, let's start out with those Washington Commanders. Can you protect Jaden Daniels and give him time to hit the big play? Last week, the Commanders' offensive line was great at giving him time to throw the ball, and he was able to hit multiple deep balls to Dyami Brown that directly led to points for Washington. However, this Eagles pass rush is much better than Detroit's beat-up line, and we cannot forget the Commanders lost starting right guard Sam Cossie, and he's out for the rest of the season. So, the challenge just became much tougher now because you're shifting your offensive line. And on top of that, Jalen Carter's on that other side. He's looking at that other side, and he is hungry as he has been heating up as the playoffs have gone on. And last week, he had 2 sacks on Matthew Stafford, including basically the game clincher in the fourth quarter on 3rd down and 2 when he was able to get to Stafford for the sack. The Commanders are going to need to come in with a plan to try and slow down Carter and give Daniels time to look downfield and beat this Eagles secondary over the top. If they can hit those big plays like they were able to last week against the Lions, they definitely have a chance at pulling off this upset. So, the Eagles' key to victory is a very, very similar one. Their key to victory is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Feed the beast that is Saquon Barkley. Now, I know you're going, Josh, you gave like the same key last time, but for the opposing team. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Saquon has been an absolute menace these playoffs, going for over 115 rushing yards or more in each of those 2 games with those 2 touchdowns as well. And the Commanders have the 30th ranked run defense. Last week, Jahmyr Gibbs ran for 105 yards on them last week during the game against the Lions. Now, while Jahmyr Gibbs is an excellent running back, he is not Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley is a different animal. He is a different beast. Now, this will be Washington's toughest rushing assignment all season. And I know they faced Saquon twice. And in those 2 prior matchups, Saquon went crazy. In week 11, 146 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. In week 16, 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, including a 68-yard rushing touchdown in that second game. Now, with Jalen Hurts' mobility in question and yet to show he can be dangerous with his arm, these playoffs, the Eagles are going to rely heavily on Saquon Barkley to get the big chunk plays and find the holes in this Commanders defense to hopefully open up the pass game for Jalen Hurts. Now, for this week, so those are my keys to the game. I'm going to be doing the prize pick squares again, so I'm going to do those before I get into my score and winner prediction. So, last week, I gave you guys the prize picks squares. We went one for 4. I'm so sorry. Did not do so hot last week. So, we're looking to improve on that. So, for this week, since there's only 2 games, I still want to give you the 4 squares. So, we're going to do 1 square per team, right? Seems right. So, let's start out with the Washington Commanders. Give me Jaden Daniels over 225.5 passing yards. This line has hit in his last 5 games, except for the Dallas game when he only played the first quarter, so I do not count that game. His last 5 games, I expect him to throw the ball a lot and hit some very deep passes. So give me Jaden Daniels there. For the Eagles, this was a pretty easy decision. Give me Saquon Barkley over 130.5 rushing yards. This has hit in 3 of his last 4 games, and he surpassed this mark in both previous matchups against Washington and is only getting better as these playoffs have gone on. With Washington's 30th ranked run defense, even though it's a super high line, I think they run the ball a lot this game, and I think he hits this mark. Alrighty now. It is prediction time. And this one I've kept going back and forth on. I kept going back and forth because I see the path to victory for either team. But I think this game's a slugfest. I think both teams throw big punches offensively, and I think it's a little bit of a higher scoring game, much like the Week 16 matchup. And give me Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders to upset the Philadelphia Eagles in Philly 31-28, and they will represent the NFC in this year's Super Bowl. Will be the Washington Commanders. And that's just one game. We still got another game to cover here, folks. So, our next matchup, still staying on Sunday, is going to be the AFC Championship game Sunday afternoon at 3:30 p.m. in Kansas City as the Chiefs face off with the Buffalo Bills, and we get Mahomes versus Allen Part 4 in the playoffs. Oh man, am I excited. Oh man, am I excited for these playoff matchups, baby. Come on. So, let's start out with the Bills because I'm pumped up right now. I'm pumped up. The Bills are coming off of their thrilling 27-25 win over the Baltimore Ravens that saw their defense cause absolute havoc to Lamar Jackson and ended up forcing 3 turnovers in that game. Now, the offense took advantage of that good field position, and Josh Allen was smart with the ball, and he ran for 2 touchdowns. Didn't have a crazy game passing-wise, but he still played well enough, and the Bills were able to get the victory and move on. So, in these playoffs, quarterback Josh Allen has 2 passing touchdowns and 2 rushing touchdowns. So, he's been able to be mobile with using his legs, and the arm has been effective so far. Running back James Cook has rushed for an average of 93.5 rushing yards per game this postseason and also has added in 1 touchdown as well. But it's been this Bills defense. This Bills defense has been the difference maker in these playoffs so far, and they're making it really, really difficult for teams to put together long drives against this team. A lot of the times when the Bills have given up points, it's been the other team getting decent field position. Defense really has been really good and really solid, forcing teams into field goals instead of touchdowns. So this defense has been a true difference maker so far in the playoffs. And they've been able to get pressure to the quarterback, and especially good in limiting the run game, as they held running back Derrick Henry to only 84 rushing yards last week, which was an incredible feat if you ask me. Now, the challenge does get tougher for Buffalo, however, as Taylor Rapp has been ruled out for the game, which is a huge, huge loss to Buffalo's secondary. And they're going to have to overcome that if they want a chance to defeat the Kansas City Chiefs, I would say at this point, their rivaled foe in the playoffs. Kansas City, on the other side, is coming off of their 23-14 win against the Houston Texans, where it was Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, the dynamic duo, the tale as old as time, lighting it up once again in the playoffs, with Kelce having 117 receiving yards as well as the lone receiving touchdown in the win. Kansas City took advantage of good field position as well by missed field goals from Houston, but that defense registered 8 sacks, and George Karlaftis had an absolute monster game with 3 of those sacks. Now, while this might not be the most talented Chiefs team that we've seen in the past, I think, in my opinion, this is the best defensive team the Chiefs have had in any of their Super Bowl runs. Think about it. You can take a minute and think about it. I think this is the best defensive team the Chiefs have had in any of their recent Super Bowl runs. This team is top 10 in total yards allowed and points given up per game. And this team is deep defensively. You have George Karlaftis, you have Chris Jones, you have Trent McDuffie. That team, that defense is stellar. And I know I'm probably missing players. I was off the top of my head just naming a couple. But I think this is the best defensive team the Chiefs have had in any of their recent Super Bowl runs. Don't know if that's a hot take or not, but that's just my opinion. Now, these teams have also met earlier this season. They also played in Week 11, much like the Eagles and Commanders. So, kind of funny. Bills and Chiefs also met in Week 11. The Bills came out victorious in that game in Buffalo, 30-21, where Josh Allen led the team not only in passing, but as well as rushing. And the defense had 2 interceptions against Patrick Mahomes. Now, you want to hear the crazy thing about that? Those 2 interceptions against Patrick Mahomes have been Kansas City's last turnover. Since that Week 11 game, Kansas City has not had a turnover. That's 8 straight games without a turnover. Absolutely wild to think about that. Now, while Allen and the Bills have had success in the regular season against the Chiefs, they are 0-3 against Mahomes in the playoffs. So, what is their key to getting their first win against Mahomes in the playoffs and getting to their first Super Bowl in 31 years? Now, the Bills' key to victory is going to be, can they win the line of scrimmage and get the run game going? The Bills rely heavily on the legs of James Cook and Josh Allen to move the ball against defenses, and they will need to have success against the Chiefs and against Chris Jones, against George Karlaftis, and win that line of scrimmage for their run game to have success. If the Bills are able to establish this run game early on, guess what? It opens up that play action where Allen can unleash that cannon of an arm for those deep passes that he loves to throw. But If the Bills cannot get the run game going, the pass game becomes much harder against this Kansas City defense. Now, the Chiefs, they're looking for the three-peat. And their key to get them to another Super Bowl and will be get others besides Kelsey involved in the pass game. So, last week, Mahomes only had 177 passing yards, and 117 of those went to Travis Kelsey. 66% of those yards were to Travis Kelsey. While it worked last week, the Bills know Travis Kelsey, and in that first matchup, they held him to 2 catches for 8 yards. 2 catches for 8 yards in that first game. While I think Kelsey will be more involved than he was in the Week 11 matchup, Mahomes is going to need some sort of combo of Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, and DeAndre Hopkins to step it up and become a true threat to that Bills defense. Now, no Taylor Rapp, like I mentioned, is huge, and I think that has exposed the Bills secondary to be vulnerable now that he is not playing. But one or more of those wide receivers needs to become available for Mahomes to throw to, because the Bills, they're going to be watching Travis Kelsey like a hawk. They're going to be honed in on him. They're going to be just glued, seeing where Kelsey is at all times. That's where you're going to have to rely on Xavier Worthy to get open in space, find Hollywood Brown deep, or have DeAndre Hopkins make some plays. Okay, we are almost at prediction time. But first, prize picks time. Yes. Now, here are the prize picks that I like for this game. For Buffalo, I like James Cook over half a rushing or receiving touchdown. Now, while he wasn't able to find the end zone last week, this has hit in 5 of his last 6 games. If you want to go further back, it's hit in 8 of his last 10 games. He scored twice in the Week 11 matchup against the Chiefs. And this season, following a game he didn't score, he scored the next game. So here we are. Following a game he did not score, which he did not last week, he has scored every time this season. So I really like this line. I think he's going to find the end zone. I think he is also, besides Josh Allen, he is their biggest threat in the red zone. And I think he finds the end zone in this game. For the Chiefs, I really like, I just talked about him briefly, Hollywood Brown over 37.5 receiving yards. I think with the Bills focused on Kelsey, no Taylor Rapp, Mahomes will be able to find Brown a lot in this game. Now, Hollywood has only played in 3 games this year, but that 37.5 line has hit in 2 out of his last 3 games. I think Brown will be a threat, as the Bills did not see him in that first matchup, so they don't have as much film on him either. So there are the prize picks. The moment you all have been waiting for. Who gets to represent the AFC in this Super Bowl 59? This game, I think, comes down to the last possession, such as the previous playoff matchups have been between Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. And I just think Mahomes and the Chiefs have their number in the playoffs. And I don't think that changes on Sunday. Give me the Kansas City Chiefs to win and move on to the Super Bowl 27-21. There you have it, folks. There you have it, folks. I have the Washington Commanders and Kansas City Chiefs meeting in Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans. Now, that is all I have for today's show. Nice short episode for you guys. I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I want to thank you all so much for listening. Do not forget to like, comment, subscribe onto the YouTube channel. Be sure to tell your friends about our show. As like I said earlier, we are trying to grow this audience. And what do you think of my predictions? I want to hear your thoughts. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you like the prize picks I gave you? What are your score predictions? What are your keys to victory for both teams? I want to hear from you guys. So comment down below on Spotify, on YouTube, and I will take a look at those comments. Now, I will be out of town this weekend, so the championship recap show is going to be coming out on Tuesday morning, so look out for that. But I will still be able to watch the games, don't you worry. Enjoy the games this Sunday. I can't wait to see what Super Bowl matchup we have to look forward to. And until next time, this is Joshua Nowakowski of the J Sports NFL Show saying have a wonderful day and goodbye.